Okay. Looks like we'll go with the echo, but we're glad to have you all connected. Council members that are committee members, could you self-introduce? Brett and Spencer, we want to make sure that you can hear us.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm in my car, so.
I can hear you also.
Okay, well, just to move it along, that's Spencer Duncan from District 8 and Brett Kell from District 5, the rest of our committee. We are joined today by staff that I think we'll introduce as things move along in the meeting. And with that, call the meeting to order. And our first order of business is to approve the June 21st, 2023 minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the June 21 minutes. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Minutes are approved. We will move into our substance agenda. The first thing I want to do before we get to item number 3 is to introduce Wendy Reeb, who is now our staff initiative manager. And we are so so happy to have you and welcome. And my understanding is John is going to introduce you.
Sure.
Okay.
John Chardine, Director of Property Maintenance. I am pleased to announce that Wendy Reeb is our new facilitator for the change of culture, property maintenance. Wendy is my senior program manager. Wendy began working with the city of Topeka in 1997 and has worked with a property maintenance unit for 26 years. Wendy supervises the special structure unit, oversees the vacant registry program, and handles all software and training within the unit. She has had the opportunity to work in all roles with the unit and makes a great asset when it comes to understanding the needs and legal requirements of the unit. During her time here with the unit, she has seen it go through many changes to include mayors, city managers, department heads, supervisors, and code changes. Her and her husband, Kenneth, are Topeka natives and have 4 children and 2 grandchildren.
Welcome. Thank you. Do you have anything to share?
I do not. I'm excited about continuing to move forward on it.
We have already worked through, she and I, the work plan that we inherited from the past manager and have it almost caught up, right?
We're getting there. Yeah.
We're getting really close. As we all know, there are many moving parts to this initiative and that work plan is pretty complex, but we're getting it caught up to date. And so really appreciate having you on board.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, moving along, our first item is to talk about reports from our Action Marketing Mowing team. Monique, do you want to take this and introduce our mowing folks?
Sure. Season's greetings, everyone. Monique Guade, Director of Community Engagement with the City of Topeka. So this afternoon, I will provide you with a brief summation of the Changing Our Culture Property Maintenance and Mowing Initiative. I'll be referencing the mowing initiative by the numbers, the 2022-2023 infographic. And so I'll reference the top half of it. So in our top blue box on the left, it shows the total calls that we received both in 2022 and 2023. The second box, green box, is the calls for mowing vendors, both for 2022. Unfortunately, we don't have that number because we weren't able to track it, but we have the number for 2023. For mowing citations, this information was provided to us by the Property Maintenance Division, and that shows again the numbers for both years. The properties mowed are numbers that were provided for us in the bottom left green section by our mowing vendors. The social media posts were performed by our communications department. That shows the number of posts for both years. And then ending in the community engagement number of events, there needs to be a correction. I inadvertently provided communications with the wrong number. We actually had a total of 5 events in 2023, and the events were as follows. The first was on March the 30th. It was an informational session held at Central Park Community Center. Then on April the 3rd, there was one held at Hillcrest Community Center. And then the last one was April the 10th, that was held at the Salvation Army at here in on Southeast part of 6th Street, and that was a bilingual presentation. On April the 20th, we had representation at the Call Valley United Way Topeka Volunteers event. And then we ended, the last event was held June 23rd at the Fiesta Topeka. We had a booth there as well. So that's a total of 5. So if anyone has any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer those. I will end on this note. We are very appreciative of our mowing vendors that were able to provide reasonably priced services to our neighbors in need. And their names are as follows: Robert Johnson Jr., Cesar Ortega Solis, Andreas Garcia, Nathan O'Beir, and Anthony Ortega. I'll stand for any questions before inviting our mowing vendors to come forward. Councilwoman?
Okay, thank you. Chair, can we get a breakdown
Sure.
by,
Councilor
not
Sanchez.
right now,
Sure, yes, ma'am.
later to see for 2023 who did what out of all of our vendors?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that would be, and then that way, if we could have that somewhere online as well, so folks can see, or I don't know if we want it online. I don't know if it's kind of private information for who our vendors are. I don't think it should be. I think it should be out there in the open, but I would like to have.
Absolutely. I'll be more than
that
happy to
breakdown.
call the 5. I have our 2 contracted vendors numbers, but I'll be more than happy to call the others and inquire and provide information to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Monique, you might want to note, the issue of the calls for mowing vendors was new this year.
Yes.
We talked about it a little bit in advance of this meeting, but could you talk about that just a little bit?
Sure. So late in the season of 2022, we thought of the idea of opening it up and asking mowing vendors who would offer reasonably priced mows to let us know their information and provide that information out. That was so late in the season that we weren't able to track it. So this year we had the total of the 5 that were of interest. We did an all call, thanks to communications, asking vendors who were interested in helping people throughout Topeka to contact us, and we were able to provide that information. So it was new. I am still getting phone calls of inquiries. Those numbers were as of August of 2023. So I'm still getting a few phone calls now of people wanting their grass to be mowed. So I think it's something that we should continue in 2024, at least of providing that information to our neighbors in need.
Thank you for that, because if I recall correctly, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, when it turned out we had a list and some information, I don't recall if you had pricing information or not.
We did. All of them gave us information, but it was all based upon just a quote until the vendors
Sure.
were able to go to the actual home and provide that information.
But if I recall correctly, that was very satisfactory to the callers.
Absolutely.
So we didn't have an unmowed yard or a need to call out anybody else, which was pretty exciting to me.
Very.
Since that's our goal, is to help ourselves or help each other.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
You're most welcome. So I'll move it along. And at this time, we are going to have 2 brief 2023 mowing season presentations from the Changing Our Culture Property Maintenance Contracted Mowing Vendors. First, we'll have Irma Forbes with the Gil Carter Initiative, followed by a representative from the Omni Circle.
Link is on, so.
Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here. And I must say, it was a pleasure to be part of the mowing process. My main person, I must tell you, who did most of the mowing on hands was my grandson. He was 21 yesterday. He's autistic. So it was really good to promote autism or get them active in that. My grandson is borderline, but when he does something, he's extra meticulous about what he does. So I would take him to the site and he would do the mowing very meticulously, whatever you tell him, and that's how autism works. So I was very glad to include that aspect of the community. We did about 10 to 12 homes a month, and we did it about 3 to 4 times each month. And the other, what I would have liked, and I know it was not protocol, is that there are seniors outside of the NIA who needed help. So what I did after speaking to Monique, I had my son and his son do the mowing outside of the program. And we did it to senior citizens and veterans who were ill and able to do that. So maybe that's something we could think about for the future, even though they're not within the NIA, maybe we could extend that courtesy to people who are disabled. Another thing I noticed while we were doing the mowing is that there are other health and safety issues around the home and yard. And then there are people who does like mechanic shops with a lot of waste matters in residential neighborhoods. And we have tried to get that addressed, and we're still going through the process. So maybe as we mow and we take care of the grass section of the yard and we report things that we're finding, other than that, maybe we could find ways to help address those, because they are very concerning to the people in the neighborhood. But I think I said a lot, so I thank you for the opportunity to do that. And it was a pleasure for us to be part of the program.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so can you give me an example of one of these situations that you were looking at where this additional items were, or whatever kind of concerns, when you were mowing the grass, what were you finding exactly?
But there were a lot of debris. There was a lot of equipment that was not working that's around the home. Things that would cause rodents and mosquito, for instance. And then there were neighbors to the elderly who had like mechanic shop running out of their residential neighborhood, in and out all hours of the day and night. And then they're right next to a elderly person who feels helpless in addressing that.
So possible zoning, like not
Yes.
even knowing if they're zoned
Yes.
for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Those are all valid, because I think that what you're finding out and what we know of as representatives is with our aging community, those that are aging in place, how vulnerable they often feel and how helpless they often feel to things that are going on around them. So that's good to bring it up.
Yeah, and that's true, because they do feel helpless. They're elderly. They cannot, physically, they are not, possess all the strength and the ability to fight. And if they report, they feel intimidated, because then people could come to their homes and do things to them.
Exactly.
So then the situation continues to be non-addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Irma, I'm gonna double check with you. Do you know if the Central Park NIA is interested, or Gil Carter Initiative, I guess, is interested in doing this kind of work again?
Yes, we would.
Okay, and I also am hearing some ideas that maybe we could share. Both Monique and Gretchen are leaders in our marketing and action team, and we'll be looking at what to do for the project next summer. If you have thoughts right now, and you've shared some, or in the future, about how we could perhaps use what you learned in the examples and share them, we would sure appreciate it.
Not a problem at all. I'll be glad to.
Okay. Thank you. I need to watch for those guys. Cleanup brigade. Are you going to introduce?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So I want to make sure that I don't tear up Jermel's title at Omni. So I'm going to allow Jermel to introduce himself and provide us with his title there, please.
I am coordinator. Director of Volunteer Services and Community Service at Army Circle Group. I don't know where to begin. Roughly we did about 216, I believe, yards this year, which was a little bit less than last year. I think a lot of that was contributed to the storms that we had come in, debris that was in the way because of those storms. And then also the change in the community where people were actually getting out there mowing their own yards. And I believe there was other people that were coming in the community and mowing yards as well.
Wow.
We don't know who those people were, but those yards were taken care of. So that kind of dropped our numbers a little bit. We began this initiative. One of Omni's structures or foundation is off of individuals being the best self that they can be. So we started this initiative with trying to inspire people just to do that. I think we've seen with the yards being taken care of and people mowing their own yards, inspiring that. And I think that's something that we want to continue to do in the Central Park neighborhood, but also piggybacking on what Irma said, we did get people outside of Central Park area calling, asking for if we could teach them how to use the equipment, we could come and cut their yard, or if they could watch us as we cut the yard so they can learn how to do it themselves. But being that we restricted to Central Park, we could not meet their needs. So maybe that's something that could be changed in the year to come, so where we can help those individuals as well. I think that's about all that I have.
Wonderful. So if I could address, please, one of the concerns that Irma and Jamel brought up. Their question of if they could go outside of their neighborhoods or outside of a particular NIA, the answer is yes, as long as it's in a neighborhood improvement association. Please remember that the equipment was purchased by CDBG funds, Community Block Grant funds provided by HUD, and therefore they require us only to go in low to moderate income neighborhoods. So there's 21 current NIAs, and if you'd like in 2024 to go to any of those NIAs, absolutely. Please feel free to. You don't have to ask any permission. Just do it and just record it on your report, and that would be perfect. We'd greatly appreciate that.
Go ahead.
I just want to know how we can bottle your passion and your intention and your heart and give it out into community, because we are challenged in the area that I serve in Oakland and North Topeka and a small section of East Topeka. I need to make sure that I look at what our level of citations look like historically. Yet even though we have one of the strongest NIAs in the city, we're flailing with how to get people to extend themselves in the way that Omni is. We have a high rental area in Oakland, but do you know what the stats are for the area of Central Park? Isn't that a lot of rental as well?
I'm not sure, so
Yeah, it is. And so, we have a lot of elders too. And elders is where we obviously want to focus our attention on, those that can't get out and push that lawnmower anymore, or that young mom that cannot afford as a single mother to purchase a lawnmower. And honestly, we just have not had the traction. So I think that what I would like to do with you guys is seriously this coming season to see if we can get you all into our NIA Oakland. Our other two NIAs in North Topeka are struggling to stay, functioning, and we are trying to regroup in the North Topeka or the East Topeka North NIA. But definitely I need to make connection with you so that we can get you to the NIA meeting. And thank you for all you do.
Just to follow up with what you said, it was closer to the first year, I believe. Myron and I went to Hillcrest. Hillcrest to speak with the NIA there. I'm not sure because I haven't been following, but they wanted to get the same type of program that Omni has with, the mowing over there. I'm not sure if they got that up and running yet, or if they've reached out to you guys to be a part of the program. But we can pretty much do the same thing that we did with them to kind of share that information to inspire that in the NIA there.
Can you tell me how many are your core that do mowing? I know the last time that I had heard y'all talk that there was maybe about 5 to 7.
The core of us, there is, let's see, I don't remember the names off my head. There's about 5 of us. 5 of us.
And your age group is wide.
Right.
I mean, Myron and I are probably the same age. I may be older than you. I'm not sure. Okay. So what I'm saying is, that the thing that we hear so much about young people, because you're definitely younger than me, are too busy or whatever. I think that we have to learn in a creative way, an inspirational way to move past that. And I'm just going to use as an example for our Fiesta Mexicana, we have volunteers from little kids all the way up to in their 80s. And so there's everything in between, right? At Fiesta Mexicana. And I think that the German Fest has that kind of vibe too, of all ages. But for what we're trying to implement here, which is, much different than church oriented, but it's giving back, we're just hitting walls. So again, just good job, and we need you in Oakland, so I'll be hooking up with you.
Well, I really appreciate Jermel's report, and it makes me think of some of the conversations we had earlier about how to tackle the next mowing season. And there was some conversation, and I'm just brainstorming here, but conversation about recruiting civic clubs over the winter, maybe doing a speakers bureau or something. And when Jermel, full transparency, we were talking about something else and ended up straying into this conversation. So I knew a little bit about what he was going to say and had a chance to react. What if we looked at Irma's experience and Jermel's and did some recruiting to try and get a civic club or church group to adopt at least one, maybe not even more than one, for each NIA, and actually, use the model of what happened in Central Park to train others to go do the same sort of thing and go door to door and end up with, when they show up with their mowers, because some people know they're coming and all of a sudden they hear everybody else revving up their mowers and they see lawns mowed in advance. I mean, there's some real successes there. And then the conversation about, think about the young autistic boy. Maybe there's somebody in your neighborhood that you want to develop into, or teenage, just young people, how to mow, get some mowers and so on. I wonder if there was just one group per neighborhood, whether these folks could help train them from their experience, and we could do that kind of outreach.
Are you talking about the idea of like adopt an NIA?
Kind of.
Yeah, we this summer pushed out a whole campaign actually that was sort of like this. Monique, you might be able to help jog my memory a little better, but it was specific. GTP pushed out the information. It was specific to like corporate partners and, seeing if they could sponsor a day or come work with us in a neighborhood. And we received no traction at all. So yeah, I know this is a little different, but just wanted to add some context that is an approach that similarly we have taken.
Exactly. And when we talked about it, we talked about the fact that we might need to recruit. If we were going to try something like that to be more intentional. But what I'm hearing is, out of listening to success in Central Park and going, oh, if that's a model, if it's a model and we're looking at recruiting specifically for a season for a neighborhood, it might be more concrete enough that we could have some more success. I don't know.
So I don't want to speak on behalf of Dr. Spiker, but community engagement is open as well, as we can partner together. If Omni Circle and the Gill Corner Initiative can let us know their availability, and then we can have an offline conversation, because they are the experts. We need them to do the trainers. That's what I would look at it as. And so if they could share with us their availability in 2024, we're more than happy to do so. My suggestion would be between the months of January and March.
You know, we've got a meeting coming up in December, and so I'm not trying to get anything settled right now, but
Sure.
while they're here, it's just exciting to see their faces and hear the
Absolutely.
story fresh, and we knew we wanted to try and figure out something. And I'm not trying to pre-select what it would be, just listening and brainstorming. So any questions from the rest of the committee?
One more thing, if I let me add real quick.
Sure.
Go. Jamel's got one more thing, Spencer, and then we've got you on.
I believe that it is on the city website. I'm a city employee, so on the city website, volunteerism for city employees. We do have a block in there where they have Omni Circle and the things that we do. So if city employees want to give back to the community, that option is there. But I also wanted to state, and I've kind of been doing a little work with HR to try to see what can be sparked, influencing our city workers to give volunteer hours to the city. And whether that just may be, you know, you get a dinner for two to a restaurant, or movie tickets, or whatever it may be, some type of incentive to say you've given these hours back to the community, and that's sparking the influence to give that time.
Good idea.
That's all I have.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank
Spencer, did
you.
you have something?
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. My question is a logistical question, and I kind of can't believe I don't know this, but my own fault. We are sort of the hub to connect homeowner to the mowing vendor, right? What is our role, or is there any in like scope of work or pricing once we've made those connections?
So Councilmember Duncan, I can answer that question for you. So community engagement is the administrator of the program, of the mowing initiative part of the program. Sorry, let me specify that. So we answer the phone or the email of the inquiry. At that time, we inquire if they're interested in seeking a volunteer from the Call Valley United Way Topeka volunteer module. Therefore, we share with them that first, we don't vet the volunteers, and secondarily, we cannot guarantee them that a volunteer will be matched with them. If they'd like to, that's the option that we provide. The majority of the calls we received this summer were those that were looking for mowing vendors. The 5 that I spoke of earlier provided us with their price range. However, quotes would be provided as they went to view their actual yard. So we are the connector, is what I'd like to refer us to be able to provide resources and information.
Great, thank you. And then my comment, and we can connect on this later, not here, but I mean, so part of my district includes Crestview, which does not have an NIA. But I can assure you, as there are open cases throughout there, and people who, due to age, lack of accessibility, affordability, all that good stuff, could probably take advantage of this. So at some point, I'd like to just sit down with you and see how we can spread the word to that neighborhood, which certainly would qualify over there for some of this assistance.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's a really good point. Is there flexibility with HUD if you've got a block group that meets the criteria?
I think that should be an offline conversation with Director De La Rosa and myself at another
That's
time.
fine. That's just fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Aaron, did you have something you wanted to contribute? It's fine. All right, Michael.
The only thing that I would say is, as we think about expanding the program.
And could we have you come up to the mic? I am so sorry to ask, just for the council members online.
Or else you ought to really holler.
Thank you.
One of the things I was gonna say, as we think about expanding the program, and reaching out to further communities, and as we talk about Oakland and things of that nature, one of the things I think we want to look at is maintenance of the equipment, as far as looking at how much we're mowing and what we have, because we had to go through quite a bit to get that stuff down to be able to make it a regular mow. And some of the equipment that we have couldn't always sustain that. So we want to make sure that the maintenance of that sustains, but also if we're expanding and we're doing more work out into further communities, a lot of that, because we do it for free. And so that is expanding gas mileage on vehicles, trailers and things like that, that sometimes if we want to take multiple equipment out, we don't have the trailers to take all of the equipment to different locations. So we may need some additional support there if that's what we want to look at as far as expanding those programs into further communities. So I think we can probably get to a point where we can gather more volunteers, but it would also come with having the ability to get the equipment to the location, which we don't have at this point. So I just wanted to make that.
Go ahead. So how many days on average per week during mowing season are you guys mowing?
So we were doing 2 days a week. We were doing Mondays and Saturdays, or the Mondays and Fridays. We were alternating the Saturdays and the Fridays throughout the week. And then so that gave us 4 days throughout the month that we were going out and cutting the grass.
Okay, so if y'all would get more volunteers under Omni, like say if I knew people in community that specifically wanted to come under Omni to volunteer, to learn from you all, to utilize the equipment, right? Then would there be a possibility to expand that?
Yeah,
the days?
Absolutely. I think we will be able to, if we have more volunteers, we can send different people to different locations. We are currently with the equipment that we have. We use most of the equipment, but we don't use all of it because we don't have all the people coming out and using every piece of equipment that we have. But if we say that we're looking at expanding to another location, then we can just kind of split what we have and send part of the equipment to one location and part of it to another. The only thing that
the days that you're not mowing, maybe let's just say hypothetically, if you got 4 or 5 more volunteers, say, I want to come under Omni. I want to be in their group and I want to specifically do mowing. That's what I want to do.
right.
That maybe they could take up an additional day that you all are not doing and utilize the equipment.
And so the only thing I'll say to that, and that's, we can do that, but also you're thinking capacity for the time for those people who are invested in our current volunteer opportunities. So Jamel and Myron both do this as volunteers. And so they give 4 days a month to go out and cut this grass. And so we add an additional, they are the managers that operate this program. So we had additionally days that requires more volunteers on them. And so that's capacity within us being as an organization, giving more time what they already have.
If this program would grow under Omni though, could a possibility or thinking of the highest good that it could come to go in addition to these two, having 2 more managers of the program expanding? I'm brainstorming here to where you could ultimately end up with a core group of maybe 4 or 5 managers that could then extend out.
Yeah, I think
So it would, the onus wouldn't be on Myron and Jermel the whole time.
yeah, if it's another community that said they wanted to operate, we can look at what that looks like. But again, it still would boil down to the capacity to be able to manage and operate, to be able to lead them to do it the right way, the way we've been doing it. So that's going to take some more time from whether it be Jamel and Myron or myself. Somebody's going to have to be able to manage that crew as they go out and do the work.
Okay, thank you.
Good questions, because the other option, the other model is to suggest to other groups that if they've got 5 guys and a couple of mowers, or 5 people and a couple of mowers, they too could do what Omni has done in Central Park and have them share just their experience and expertise in how to manage some of our NAs are really big, some are smaller, but I mean, they started out with Central Park, which is pretty darn big, and that experience. And then I remember from your first year more anecdotally of going out and somebody's maybe a single person in the house, maybe physically not able to mow or doesn't have a mower, but you all would say to them, well, there's a lot of clutter here in the yard. Do you suppose you could maybe pick some of this up before we get back here? And they did.
Yeah.
And then they came and swept the walks after you were done and things like that. We had some good photos of that, but that kind of just knock on the doors in advance, schedule that you're gonna come on a certain day, let the word kind of filter out like dying water and see what happens.
Well, one of the
Was a
things
good model, I thought.
Yeah, it is, and I think one of the things that I think that's kind of going unspoken in what we do here at Omni Circle is kind of what you were speaking to and saying that you have area that needs to be focused on, but it's what we kind of do within our organization, which is one of the values of giving back. And so when we train and educate people in our community of the importance of doing that, that is what keeps our organization to be able to do that work in the community. So as we continue to grow as an organization and we continue to bring more people that are willing to do that work, that's what's keeping these individuals and more individuals that are joining our organization to come out and do that work. And so I think that that's where we're missing when we talk about community building, how you're going to find those individuals that's going to stay committed to it, to do it to what we're doing for free in the community, without having some type of community base that they're working together to continue to keep that, whether it be Oakland or another community. And so right now, that's what we do is we focus on that, and that's what we build in-house within our organization.
Thank you. Anything else from the screen here? Thank you so much. It's inspiring, and we're pleased both organizations and what you've done and this intel you're bringing back for us to look for the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you, Monique.
You must
for
welcome.
managing all that. You want to wrap up this piece with the
Absolutely. So I am gonna re-share the screen here. And as Monique spoke to the top half of this document, and it's being a little slow on this scroll, so hang tight. There we go. I am today going to be talking about some of the overall program accomplishments in 2023 as part of the. We're still on. Okay, sorry about that. I'm going to be speaking to the 2023. And I think we are off. Yeah, it booted us.
well, they're back. So
We can still hear you though.
really,
Can you see us now?
No,
Yeah.
oh, yes, I can see you.
Okay.
See it.
Okay. Our internet cut out, and so Zoom just suddenly stopped, but it looks like we are back on. Thanks for bearing with me while I'm talking and doing computer work. Clearly not a strength of mine. So again, to just repeat in case the Zoom cut me off, we are going to be speaking to the 2023 program accomplishments today. So just a brief overview, the governing body approved updates to the city's retaliatory eviction ordinance and created a new LLC ordinance. That component was actually late 2022, but we felt like it was important to still include. And as you heard from Monique, we completed the second year of the summer mowing initiative. The city also created a new housing navigator position, which is housed within the property maintenance unit. And that position helps connect those who are in need of available resources at the city and among our partners. The city also took a strategic approach to help filling some of the vacant property maintenance inspector positions. That retooling of positions, John would be the expert there, but we know that that resulted in some positions being filled and wanted to recognize those efforts. And then we also developed a very robust resource guide, which I will pull up here on the screen in a moment. And we distributed that citywide within different divisions and departments at the city, as well as we shared that with a lot of different community partners. Monique helped with that distribution. I am pleased to share also that that resource guide has been adopted by the city's property maintenance unit. And so that guide is being shared with those that they serve. So I'm going to stop this share, and then Councilwoman, I know you had requested that I pull up the website, so I am going to try to get to there now. Okay. Here we are. So those accomplishments that I just went over and that Monique talked about today as well, are also outlined in a more robust way on the city's website. So we have 2023, 2022, and 2021 accomplishments there. So we're glad to have that. And I also was speaking to at the end of my comments about the community resource, that guide, and that guide is available on our Changing Our Culture of Property Maintenance site as well. And I know we've talked a little bit about next year. I was hoping that I could add some additional kind of context as to what the communications division with assistance from community engagement and the property maintenance unit are planning to do.
Absolutely.
As part of 2024. So as we look ahead to next year, we're working to develop a public education campaign related to common issues that our property maintenance unit sees. The goal is to start rolling that information out in the spring of 2024. And as part of that campaign, we'll be sharing information on social media, Channel 4, and through our other platforms about the most common property maintenance violations we see at the city. We'll share resources specific to those various issues, provide information on, what's acceptable condition and what's not. We'll include pictures and visuals at every opportunity because I know that helps people understand, what is appropriate versus what constitutes a violation. And really this campaign aims at arming folks with the information so that they can address these issues on their own. So we are very excited to be already working in the very early stages on what that campaign looks like. This is very much going to be a joint effort between the three divisions that I mentioned. So look for more in spring of 2024 as we roll that out. And I would stand for any questions.
Absolutely. And any questions from the committee or viewers? Councilwoman.
I would just encourage, as this additional piece ends up rolling out, to obviously we would want to reach out to the NIAs to do presentations, and I would even say any way that I can encourage on our NIA's pages, social media pages, to put the presentations that you all have on there. And I'm going to say, I'm just thinking out loud, which is probably not a good thing to do at a general meeting, but committee meeting. But I'm thinking too, there's funds that are used for mailings and NIAs, even some kind of mass mailing to residents that have access to a computer, to be able to go to see. I mean, just really try to get that word out as much as possible, because we know how many code violations there can be out there. And if people can help try to educate themselves, then maybe that can take some stressor off of you all and just keep this initiative rolling.
That's a good idea. These are the QR code queens.
Yes.
So we could,
Yes.
you just brainstorming again, send out something in the season that says, here's your QR code to check. And if we're loading them into the website as well, or some place where people could constantly go back, we could be just telling people what the next one is, and Christina and I can warm up the red couch again and get back on the circuit or get other people. And it could certainly support the mowing folks. I mean, if they know that these resources are there. Just wanted to highlight too, thank you, Gretchen, for the great presentation. For the other committee members, one of the purposes of the staff team came up with that quarterly, that's going to be a quarterly report, right? The piece that Monique and Gretchen shared, and then putting that accomplishments list on the website was another way to just track the Changing Our Culture of Property Maintenance progress. And I don't know that we stayed on it long enough, but Gretchen was going to build in links so that somebody who was looking at what was accomplished, if they wanted to know more about it, could just hot link straight into it. And I really appreciate that.
Yep, those links are available in that accomplishment section. So
yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else? All right. Thank you so much. We're excited. I'm thinking that our next committee meeting will be January 3rd. And this group has set itself a deadline to get that education thing at least framed out by the middle of December. So we should have a report, right?
Looking forward to it. Yes, thank you.
All right. The next item is our first policy team is municipal court and legal, with at least a brief nugget on what's happening with LLCs and retaliation. And I see Amanda Stanley has joined us.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. So I was asked to give a brief presentation explaining how the LLC ordinance has worked in practice since it went into effect at the beginning of the year. There is a memo that was added to your packet from Prosecution Chief Kelly Trussell that is through the beginning of October of this year. So roughly 10 months worth of data. It shows you how many cases have been filed and the success rate. And I would like to stress that this truly has, we asked when you passed it to give us a vital tool, and it has absolutely turned out to be a vital tool. So total entity LLC cases that has been filed this year or in the last 10 months is 108. Of those, 82 are either already corrected or soon will be, which is a marked difference. In addition to that, it has changed how the majority of entities are now responding to charged code cases. We went from regularly having business entities never appear in municipal court to they now regularly make contact with the prosecution office and code compliance. They regularly try to now fix their violations, and they are actually appearing in court. So this has definitely changed the game. And so we will give you an update at the end of the year with another year, with the whole year's worth of data. But in the first 10 months, it has made a pretty marked difference.
Thank you so much. And there was just a quick touch base. I think I know the answer, but had anybody attempt to file a complaint under retaliation yet?
We have had a few individuals come and attempt to file retaliation complaints. Unfortunately, they did not meet the elements of the ordinance. From an information standpoint, if you were going to do a public information campaign that might raise awareness of retaliatory eviction, my office is happy to help and however we can on that. But to date, I do not have a significant change in retaliatory evictions.
Thank you for that. Well, we've got on deck to I think that's part of the education campaign for next year, and linking with you and also HCCI as I understand it. So thank you for that. Councilwoman.
Question, this may be a stumbling question because I'm just formulating it in my mind right now. As we get deeper into this, perhaps in 2024, up to twice a year, I would like to consider, I don't know if we can name these. I'm not trying to pinpoint any particular LLCs at a public meeting, but we all know that there are consistent bad actors that own quite a few properties in Topeka. What I would like to see, whether we put number one as the worst, number two, without naming names, I want to see something that's compact and concise, that shows what kind of mark we're making, what kind of headway we're making overall with these most egregious entities. Does that make sense as a question, as a request?
Yes, I think what your request is to have some addition of some statistical data and a report that shows how many of these cases are being filed against the same entity.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Amanda, since we have you, Councilwoman has talked about wanting those regular reports before. Is twice a year reasonable? Like every 6 months, do you think?
Yes, we're happy to provide you reports twice a year.
And maybe this is for consideration later, but there are a number of things that we'd want reports on. And so I've been thinking that we would sync them all up and get on the same 6-month routine. Would it make more sense to report like on January to June and July to December, therefore getting reports like in February and August? Does it matter? Is there a rhythm that makes more sense?
It's really whatever the committee would like, what time of year you would like us to do reports.
Okay. I didn't know if you already had them by 6-month or 1-year cohorts.
We do track complaints, we track them all the time, but, also on an annual basis as part of budget cycles. So January, and June to December makes sense, but we can also do any other cycle that you would like.
Okay, just didn't want to reinvent if something was already there.
Well,
Thank
and
you.
also
Yeah.
the increase in how we're able to collect on charges, fines that.
Absolutely.
That
The whole thing.
before, we were just letting slide by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the collection reports on fines and fees would need to come from Judge Thadani. There would be the ones that could do the fines and fees, reporting for you.
Sounds good. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any questions? Any other questions? All right, thank you again, and hooray, it worked.
Good job.
That really was really, if people don't know it, it was City Attorney Stanley that drove the LLC, the vision of it and the whole process, and way to go.
Well, I think once we have a year's worth of data, we would like to at least submit an article to the International Municipal Lawyers and see if they'll publish it as an idea that maybe other cities could use. So stay tuned. We'll see if they care about it.
We'll write letters of support if needed.
Yes, and I would say with those letters of support for that understanding and whatever article you write, whatever journal you want to try to appear in, which I think is good, is how all of this unfolded with the changing our culture, with the consultant that brought these ideas and then challenged us to make that a reality with the recommendations rather than the same dusty reports going up on a shelf. So thank you.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too.
too.
And let's move on then to our next policy team, which is property maintenance, and we'll put John Chardine on to share with you the 3 items that are listed and anything else you think we ought to know.
Sure. What would you like to start with?
The updating the property maintenance inspector.
Sure. So it was a challenge of ours to change our property maintenance inspector job description to attract applicants that have a interest in the position. So while looking at what we had, I felt that it needed an update. Specifically, I'll hit some bullet points. A more robust description of job duties performed to include collaboration requirements within the community partners and other city staff to address chronic health and safety issues, implementation of anti-blight strategies requirements, acknowledgement that inspector must be able to properly learn and apply codes, building codes, state statutes, and bring properties into compliance. I deleted the 2-year construction-related science as a requirement. I deleted a certification requirement from CASE and expanded it from 12 months to 24 months. And I added requirements of a 1-year customer service experience. That's what we were going after, was the customer service experience.
Mm-hmm.
And a proficient in computer processing, database entry, case management, and iPad experience required or preferred. So with that, I can tell you that our number of applicants rose substantially. As a matter of fact, as of August, I had 28 applicants for the position.
As opposed to what you had the year before?
Correct. I believe it was about 5 or 6 at a time. So it was a substantial improvement, yes.
And your status of your unit now?
Retention is fantastic. I think we have 9 inspectors and we're slated for 10. So we have 1 more to go, and it is a chore to pick that person out because we have so many good applicants. So
those changes, which were Karen Black recommended,
that is correct.
really did make a difference.
They sure did.
Well, everybody I've met, I like.
Good.
And I just want to say, Chair, I just want to say something about the customer experience. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir, and
We just need to keep coming back to this over and over again because Karen Black really helped me to become aware of it through researching where she had been and what she had done, and how she also brought the same information here to Topeka, which is for the office, for our guys and gals that are out there doing the inspections, how pivotal their role is. Yes, it's important for them to give a good customer service experience. That's important for all city employees to understand that. But for them to understand the mission that they are moving forward as part of, it's not only for the city of Topeka with us sitting here, it is for the city as a whole and the importance of what they're doing. And I understand so often frontline staff can be oftentimes forgotten about or diminished or dismissed. But those folks that are frontline that give that good customer experience, but also understanding the absolute integrity that and dignity that comes with the job that they are fulfilling, that has to come from us to say that importance and to say over and over again how important they are and to mean it, because we understand the full scope of what we are trying to achieve. And without them, we can sit here and talk until the cows come in. It means nothing because they're the ones that are moving it forward. So if you could just from me, I don't want to speak for this whole committee, just continue to express that from us, from me, how important they are.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
And thank you for those comments. And for the rest of the committee and other observers, this is internal. Updating the job description is an administrative role, but because it was one of our goals to get that not only updated, but to have to find out whether there was success in not only recruiting, but performance. We have it on the agenda. John has given you an overview. There's a copy here. We're not approving it or anything like that, but if people do have questions or comments,
Sure.
I know that they're welcome. John has been just great about that. So just to clarify why it's on the agenda and why it's in here, it really was one of our accomplishments, one of our goals.
It was.
And it's wonderful to see that it worked. Let's move on to the housing navigator, John.
Another recommendation by Karen Black was to add staff, and one of the key staff members that was added was a housing navigator. Our housing navigator is Irma Faldoa, and she has been fabulous so far. I anticipate big things from her, and she's actually expanded her role. She is now a co-chair of the Homeless Initiative. And I want to make sure I got that.
I think it's innovation is in there.
Innovation,
somewhere,
yeah,
because
there
I
you
spoke about that last-
And she's doing a fabulous job with that also. Her goal was to responsibility is identifying alternative paths for homeowners with medical and financial hardships who need resources to bring their properties into compliance with existing codes. The housing navigator will submit and conduct comprehensive interviews and define resources and grants to fit the homeowner's needs. The housing navigator shall work with the code official, court services, DEI office, housing services, and community partners to provide our community with quality customer service, necessary resources in a reasonable, equitable manner to adequately address the needs of the property owners. And I have heard nothing but good comments from what she is doing. She does keep records and logs of the folks that she has helped. She has assisted with phone calls, record logs, and she's always available to answer questions concerning the records that she keeps. So I'm very satisfied with what she's doing.
And has that relieved or augmented the work that your inspectors themselves were doing before?
Not so much the inspectors, but she has dramatically decreased the workload of the court services. So it's her position to intercept the cases that would have been sent to court because of non-compliance. And she has identified why those cases have not gone or have not been satisfied, because these folks need some help. And so she's assisted with that, finding them resources.
And so that's reducing the number of cases that are going to court.
Absolutely.
Awesome, Councilwoman.
I would like to see about putting either her or you as her direct supervisor online with this committee for every 6 months to
To check in.
present, to look at numbers, so that not just us as this committee, because people do watch these,
Mhm.
so that folks can see the traction that we are trying to gain and that we're actually gaining. I also think that it would be very insightful if Irma can present every 6 months, that for her to give us a trend of what she is seeing with the with this volume that she's reducing in the court. What are the most consistent issues that people are dealing with? How are our resources within the city set up to where she can connect them? You know, what does that success look like? And the whole picture, so we can see how it rounds back to then compliance. Now, she may not be able to fill in that last one at every point, but we need to understand as a committee what that's looking like, and then the public needs to understand it too.
Does that sound possible,
It
John?
does, absolutely.
That's great. And to hear it directly from her is wonderful, because all the data in the world is great to have, but those stories of exactly how something worked really help put a face on it too.
Well, and just like what when Irma was here talking with Gil Carter, and she
Right.
was saying the issues that they were running into.
Right.
We need to be able to hear that same kind of
Right.
dialogue from Irma.
That's great.
Judge Thadani has some input on this also, because he has invited Irma to the municipal court on a regular basis. And he has been able to remove several cases from the docket, referred them to Irma for resources, and she's been able to assist in that way.
You know, sometimes when you prevented something from happening, it's a little harder to track than when it occurs and it's over. There still would be some trends to look at, like from the year before, in terms of how many cases went through the administrative process and to court versus how many in the recent 6 months, let's say. We'd be able to see some trends from that, right?
Here we can look for it.
Okay.
Yeah, see what we can find.
And pick up on her caseload as well, one way or another, try and look at that. Because our goal was to have everybody be successful, help themselves or help each other, and that's really significant. That sounds like we're on a good track.
This is a significant customer service level
Exactly.
of service
Mhm.
that the city needed and your citizens deserve, so.
Great. Okay, questions from the rest of the committee? All right, let's move on to your property maintenance SOPs. Everybody's bedtime reading. Right?
Again, this was another suggestion by Karen Black that we dive into our policies, and without going through every policy, I've pulled out the housing violations. I've reviewed it. This was a team process. This was not me alone. I received input from all of my staff members, and we tried to identify some of the common issues that we've run into. I've deleted some confusing narratives. I've also got with legal to clarify some of the processes. And I've added and deleted what needed to be done. So I can just hit on a couple of bullet points.
Okay.
One of them was the consent for our occupants. Some of our occupants may have been afraid of retaliation. And so in the past, we have required them to sign a consent for us to enter their dwelling to do the inspection. They're afraid that their name would be associated with the case. Honestly, I don't know how we would get away from mentioning their name to begin with. But with that said, I have rescinded that and I have made it a verbal option only, but those notes had been added to the case. And those notes are kept on a need to know basis for our staff only. So as it stands right now, if you were to give verbal consent, we could do the inspection.
That's huge,
That's huge.
huge.
Another one was our holiday, what do we call it? The holiday notice. Let me see a courtesy notice. So we all know that we can't do some corrections when it gets cold, like flaking and chipping paint, and we would send out the notice. And it was kind of confusing because as the year progressed, the days to have the violations addressed would decrease. So in November, we would give them 120 days. In December, we'd give them 110 days, and so far and so far. So I've changed it. So beginning in November, all of our courtesy notices will reflect one day, and that one day would be May 1st. So come May 1st, if you received a notice to correct an exterior violation such as flaking and peeling paint, you have until May 1st to come up with a game plan. That game plan must be communicated to our housing inspectors, our property inspectors. And if that happens, then we would obviously continue the case with your cooperation. If not, we were going to go ahead and open up a case and let it work its way through the course. Does that make any sense?
It does to me. It makes sense to me also. Good.
This is probably my naivete showing, but that's okay. I need to get an understanding of even just a guesstimate of percentage of cases that are being dealt with, maybe let's say on an annual basis, of houses just being cited for chipping paint alone. And there's a reason why I'm asking. If you could throw out just a ballpark. If you can't, then maybe you can follow up, but I'll tell you what my concern is.
I'm unable to give you a number without doing some research, but I can tell you that when our inspectors go on site to do an inspection, they inspect that property from top to bottom. They just don't look for whatever the complaint was or whatever they initially found. They do sanitation, they do vehicles, they do graffiti, they do structures, they do weeds, they do everything.
Okay.
So if there is a violation that is noted during the winter months, they're going to receive a courtesy notice for that violation. Now, if they have other violations, they're going to receive a standard notice of violation. So if they're missing windows, if they're missing doors, if the siding is falling off, they have to correct that.
Right.
So they're gonna get the regular.
They're going to get the regular notice for
30
that.
to 60 days on that.
But on top
Whatever.
of that, they're going to get a courtesy notice for the paint. Saying
Gotcha.
that we know that you cannot correct that.
Those would be two separate ones. Well, do you find then, maybe ask the question this way, do you find the majority of the peeling paint notifications that you give are tied to houses that already have many other violations? So this is the reason that I'm asking. Is that I know how much my district is challenged with any number of what I consider much more egregious issues than just paint that's starting to chip and needing a paint job. And I know that we only have so many officers, we only have so many code guys and gals. I also know that one of the things that you and I continue to talk about as we deal with the unsheltered crisis that we're looking at is how do we make sure that we are boarding up, strengthening up, either having the owners of these properties board up abandoned properties, buildings, etc. And we've run into a couple of really intense issues on some properties in North Topeka. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out in my own head with the staffing that you have, with the consummate amount of work that you guys are being asked to do, is it something like peeling paint during this time when we know how much still needs to be addressed with more egregious issues of code? And and pushing for that. More egregious issues of making sure abandoned structures are boarded up and continuing to follow through on that. If that should be one of our main priorities, the peeling paint. I am just throwing that out there for discussion because I just don't know how much of a code guy or gal's day is spent tied up with peeling paint issues. I'm not saying that it's not important. It is, but we know the level of work that is continuing to rise with, you know, the messes that we are trying to resolve in the city. Does that even make sense?
It does. I brought it up before. I haven't been as complete as you were, but yeah. You know, especially if other people can let their house go longer. And we're pushing LMI people to meet a standard that not everybody else does. And I see both sides of it, but
I see both sides of it too, but I see a manpower and which one is the most urgent at this time?
So we have priorities in my office, and the first one is health and safety issues. So and also we have a lot of fires in Topeka. So we focus, we prioritize for the security of the structures first. We want to make sure these properties are secure and the exterior portion is safe, especially if they're vacant. Once they're secured, then we're going to focus on making sure that they're brought up to code, especially if they have a responsible property owner. There is a large number of properties that we deal with that we don't have responsible property owners, and they're the bad behaviors. So we're trying to change that behavior.
Right.
And we have to constantly focus our efforts on changing their behavior. Like I told you before, when I assumed this position, I'm going to focus on changing the bad actors' behavior. It's not going to be immediate, but they're going to get notices constantly. They're going to get phone calls. I prefer a phone call from my inspector. They're completely surprised once we find out what their phone numbers are. And I don't want to say harass, but we remind them what the code is and that their expectations of being a property owner in the city of Topeka. And that's how we handle it.
it may be a little early, but for the situations that Councilwoman is talking about, is there an interface with IRMA? You know, like if somebody has 5 much more severe or safety violations and the house is peeling paint, is part of her role now or maybe envisioned to help put together a package that works for that particular, in this case, I'm assuming LMI occupant?
It can be.
Okay.
Right now, I put the pressure on my inspectors to identify the property owners that may need assistance. So if this is a chronic issue, I ask my inspectors to find out what the root cause of the problem is. There's 5 whys always involved. Why? Once they can figure out those 5 whys, and if IRMA can play an important role in this, then we can give the case to IRMA and let her offer her the resources, the property owners the resources. But my inspectors have a duty, and they're responsible for their zone, and I hold them accountable for it.
Well, and you do a good job with that. This is great. I think, you know, tying back into this discussion of 6-month reports, you know, maybe being able to see just how that's going for us, because we know it's evolving, but I think everybody's aware, whether it's been private owners allowing homeless camps on their property or individual cases that you've really been steadily ramping up the plan. Councilwoman.
The additional question I wanted to ask was this huge move of verbal consent now. I know that we had talked months ago about when we're talking about large apartment complexes, you know, how do you start dealing with this? And so the first approach had been dialogue on getting into the common areas, TPD, working with someone from, you know, PMU
Or fire.
Yeah, fire working with PMU. So now that we have this component, where are we at on this other component about how we're going out into these apartment complexes where people have probably been so terrified of saying anything and are living in many cases, filth and unsafety, lack of safety, especially children. How is this being approached?
So we have bi-weekly meetings with the fire marshal's office, and we are currently the topic right now is vacant structures. But I plan on bringing Alan up to date with our collaboration idea of doing joint inspections involving the multifamily housing, including all of the apartment complexes. And I expect that Alan is going to be proactive with this, and we're going to come up with a joint policy that's going to involve both divisions. And we may even have a separate inspector assigned to Alan's office to join them with the inspections. Does that sound something that you'd be interested in?
That would be phenomenal.
Very much. And at one point you all had moved down the line and I thought it was all set, but it turns out it's been a little bit on hold with you too. So I was hoping that your report on progress for that could come back at our COCPM meeting in mid-December so that we could report it out at the January 3rd Public Health and Safety Committee meeting. Is that too tight a turnaround?
It's a little bit tight because right now I have a handful of new employees and I want to make sure they get trained properly.
Okay.
And since I just have new staff, I want to make sure they're in the right direction.
So maybe that would be first quarter 2024.
That sounds better.
Okay.
And Chair, after we get Councilman Duncan, I do want to come back to this for just a moment.
Okay. Councilman. You're up.
So John, I want to go back to what I guess we'll call minor infractions, like chipping paint. Are we equally assessing those violations for inhabited properties versus vacant properties?
At the time of the inspection, Councilman, we don't know if they're vacant or they're occupied. That would probably come during a reinspection. And if it's decided that there's no progress made, my inspectors would learn that this house is vacant. It has been vacant. And so we would start another avenue to find out how long it's been vacant, why it's vacant, and why is the homeowner being irresponsible.
Right. I guess my question is, once we know a property is vacant, all right, and let's say it's secured. It's secured and it's vacant. We don't like that it's vacant, but you've established it's secured. Do they still get the same enforcement? I mean, if we go up and down the street and issue those citations for chipping paint, are we also saying they get it too, even though they're vacant? Or are we saying, oh, they're vacant, we already know that, we're dealing with that in a different way, they don't get a citation for chipping paint?
No, sir. Those are held accountable the same way as an occupied structure is.
Okay. And I know there's other issues with that, with absentee owners and all that can complicate that. So I am sympathetic to that problem. My next question is, are these rules that you've outlined in this SOP, is it just for residential, or do these same rules apply to commercial properties?
Same rules for commercial.
Okay. Are we dinging commercial properties for chipped paint?
We treat every structure exactly the same.
Okay, but I mean, do we have actual citations issued to commercial properties for some of those minor things like chip paint? The
Yes,
same
sir,
level
we
we do
do
for residential? Okay. No, I mean, it's a real question. I
Absolutely.
honestly don't know the answer. That's why I was.
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Good questions.
One more thing, Chair, I just
Yeah.
want to bring it to everybody's attention, and again, in this public forum, I received notification that there are attempts in Topeka right now to create a tenants I've lost the word for it now, a tenants' rights movement. And I think that that has to do with, you know, how for a long time, because we didn't exactly know how, or there wasn't the juice for it, we had not been addressing these things within the city, or we had just, you know, bad actors that were not caring, and which has gotten us to the point that we're at now. So I wanted to make you aware of that. I've received notification, and I
Wow.
know that there are going to be forthcoming meetings. So again, as we go through the education and how we go about this in community, that's something that we need to consider, because they may not even know what we're doing.
That's great.
So
I'm glad you've heard. I hadn't
Yeah.
heard yet anyway, and so that's great. Other questions on this one? Again, these are administrative procedures, but what John has just shared with us are two major changes. Very much appreciate the response. We don't vote on them, yet once again, I encourage everybody to read all the way through them, because some of those changes came out of us just reading through and going, is this really what you're doing? Well, not really anymore. And that helped to get these updates actually in print. And so any question's a good question. It may have an answer and it may not, but you've got it all included in your packet so that you can read through it. And
I just want to add that some of the new paragraphs in the policy, some of the changes were common practices that we have been practicing for years. They just were not into print. So I wanted to make sure that everything that we do is in print, everything that we practice is in print, and if there's any question, everything is printed online.
well,
That's
and
true.
so it is available through the city's
It's all
website.
been up, well, I think it's all been updated. I submitted the request for it to be updated, so.
Well, and with all the hiring that you're doing and the training, having these either changed or at least updated to reflect the
Yes.
current procedures is
Mhm.
critical.
Absolutely.
who should we peg to find out, Chair, if it's actually online? Is that something we can ask Liz to do?
Well, John would know what's online is different more quickly than any of the
I
rest of
can,
us.
yeah, I can check and report back.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, any more on SOPs? Understand, everybody, that this is just the housing violations SOPs. There are a number of other SOPs, meaning standard operating procedures, that code compliance has, and we have been teeing them up to have John report out to just the COCPM internal
Correct.
meetings, so that then by the time we bring them back to the committee, there's some progress made. If anybody wants to be on, have a chance to look at any of those before we've worked on them with John, just let us know and we can let you know which ones and can send in some comments.
If after you read through these, if you intend to do so, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me.
And do you want to briefly go, you wanted us to include, well, I think you asked for it, your handouts that you normally have with the committee, how those are used?
So I noticed that my occupants of the rentals, they didn't have a copy of the, neither would anybody expect them to have it, but the copy of the Kansas Residential Landlord Tenant Act. Is this what you're referring to?
Well, yep,
Okay, so
but you're also the same housing packet.
it bothered me when I went on inspections and I was bothered by the expectations of the occupants and what they were living through. And after I reminded them that, this isn't right, you shouldn't have to put up with this. Well, this is how they've been experiencing life for years. This was a learned behavior in their part. So it was a low expectations. And I told you that I intend on to raise those expectations to another level. This is acceptable. And I wanted to put something together to make sure that every case that we open for an interior inspection, the occupants received a copy of the Kansas Residential Landlord Tenant Act. I'm going to work with Gretchen to come up with a postcard with a QR code on it to make it easier for them to access the copy of it, because I really don't want to go through a whole tree every time we go through weeks of inspections. I want to make it more easier. Also on the housing violation, on a related note. Let me pull it back up real quick. When it comes to multifamily housing for apartments, say an inspector goes out, responds to a complaint. He does the inspections, he fails the inspection because of an interior violation. He goes back 60 days later, that tenant has moved out. I want that case to continue. I want the inspector to do another inspection, even though that current tenant has moved out. I put in the policy that he is to make contact with the property manager. He is to gain access at a reasonable date and time to the unit, complete the inspection, pass or fail it. If we do not get access to that, we are going to get a warrant to complete our inspection and to hold them accountable.
That is huge.
That was a practice that was practiced before, but it wasn't in policy.
Okay,
So now it's in policy.
good. I thought we had been advised that hadn't been in effect all that long, because they used to just close the case. So that's
So
really great.
it's important to me that we change the behavior of our property owners that take advantage of our occupants.
And you also included the retaliatory eviction pieces.
That's
You
correct.
hand those out as well?
I did. So along with the act is a copy of the report and an affidavit that the occupant can fill out and turn it into the prosecutor's office, municipal court, to file a complaint.
It'll be interesting to see, again, if they're not filed, what HCCI, Housing and Credit Counseling Inc. has said is that they educate, a lot of times people don't know about the retaliatory protections when they make the call. They educate them about them and educate landlords as well, depending on, either pass it along or direct, and that seems to be pretty effective in making sure the retaliation doesn't happen. So we don't see any. Just because we don't see complaints filed doesn't mean it's not working.
I want to also add that something that we have created, Wendy was a great, she assisted me with this. She probably headed this up, was create a contact list for our large property owners. And on one case, I'm not going to mention names, we have their attorneys and we have their foreman and construction crew. So if they're not getting compliance from the initial notice, then I have given direction to reach out to the attorney, to reach out to the foreman, all at one email. And this has been a huge success. Not only have they been kept out of court because of this, but they have responded quite positively with, thank you very much. We didn't know. And I get it, because when we send these notices, we send it to the record of deed. And it's usually it's not at the same location where you think it is.
Right.
So it's important to us that we follow through and make sure that compliance is met. And this is the easiest way for us to do it.
Well, and you can't make that's a beautiful example of that, you don't just pass a law and solve a problem. It's the communication, it's that feet on the ground, that one would think that's not terribly innovative, but nobody thought of it before. So good for you. That's what we wanted. This is really good news. Any comments or questions from other committee members? Okay, just wanted to make sure, because you were kind enough to put all these in and we're handing them out. I wanted to make sure the committee knew. Okay. The last item on our agenda is just to do a big quick frame out of how we're planning to deal with vacant properties. That's true as you, John.
It is.
Wendy.
Wendy, do you want to join me?
Your seat's still warm here.
So like I said before, Wendy is my senior program manager. She has been working vacant properties for years. She oversees the whole vacant property registration program. And we have suggested amended ordinance. And I'll let you take it from here.
Correct. I believe the city council heard it last night for the first time. And we are going from a 6-month registration to, I believe, an annual registration. And then they're not going to be charging for any registration fees, hoping that we will get more compliance. Our compliance in our report is actually, I ran a report today, 22. We don't consider a property complied with until the owner agrees that it is vacant, because we don't want to go out there and tell people that it's vacant and somebody goes in and there's really somebody living there. And we don't want to go under our assumption that it's vacant. So we really are trying to get contact information for people and get them to comply so that the first responders will have that information. And our vacant property team started meeting around September. And our goal at that point was to talk about the ordinance and how to get the contact information. We have shifted gears and added on the May 8th recommendation so we can start sorting through that.
So we initially looked at who needs to know and why do they need to know?
Excellent.
And so we came up with first responders, fire department, police department. And once we found out and we dove deep into it, we just weren't getting compliance out of finding people left and right. They were just not paying. They stopped caring. So now we started, I think it was your suggestion that we reach out to the county.
It was Wendy's
Was it
idea.
Wendy's idea for paying taxes?
Yes, we were trying to figure out, they're going into a system to pay. Doesn't everybody give an email? Does everybody give their name and their phone number? We haven't heard back from the county, but we're also looking at other avenues, talking to water department and reach out to Councilman Spencer. And we're just trying to come up with answers.
Can I ask how long ago did you reach out to the county?
It's been a few weeks.
And it's been one time?
Yes, I talked to one person who switched me over to, I believe, Larry Ma, and I'm waiting for him. I'm just kind of wondering if maybe there's still that option, but another option would be everybody makes a water payment online.
Spencer got his hand up. Yeah, I think having Spencer join your team is going to be helpful. One of the things that Wendy and I have been doing is sorting that whole work plan. But there are, Wendy's idea of just getting contact information on the registration solves that. Part of what we've looked at, I use the examples that Wendy listed off, whichever one of you, is that the police department has a list, the fire department has a list, code compliance has a list. Water department has a list. Do we even need a registration? And so John's processing through and saying, well, what do we need this for? Let's make sure we know what we need it for. And part of the conversation that we had was, what we really want to know is anybody in there today? And even a registration program like we had doesn't do that because it can change by the week. And so
It did change.
That pulling people together in your work team to say what's on everybody's, is there a way we can look at each other's and not have to have this extra one at all? If we can get contact information, that's at least once a year, right? On the when people pay their taxes, then it starts to simplify. We don't need an extra procedure. We don't need we're trying to set up a system that's voluntary, that people are eager to do because it's easy or it makes sense, rather than just fines and penalties and processes. And so I think right now you're sitting there with like 5 different options that maybe can collapse into at least 4 or less. And meanwhile, if there's a need to contact the county about the trying to get names on there and finding out whether maybe state law has to be changed or something like that to do it. If then also we want to be correspondingly contacting the county under the vacant property list about the tax sales
Mhm.
and some other things, and whether that's the same person on the county end, maybe it could be the same person on our end. And so coordinating that with Spencer, it looks like he's got something to add, so.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so Wendy actually sent me an email today. I haven't had a chance to respond about coming to the next meeting or the December meeting to talk about whatever, but I'm sure this is part of it.
It
The
is.
land bank group met for the first time yesterday. We had a discussion. That group obviously has a very high interest in wanting to know what the vacant properties are across the city, which is also going to take some coordination with the county. So what I was going to and I'll put this in an email and we can talk about it in December before, but so I think planning, Rhiannon and Quinn will be able to assist with this a little bit too, so that we can have some coordination and some extra help on that list and streamlining the process, because there's several of us who would like to have it, but we don't all need to be doing our own independent work. So we can have that conversation a little bit more, Wendy, but that was definitely a topic of conversation yesterday among the land bank board.
I appreciate it. We're really looking forward to that.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, because it seemed like there was such a mutuality, I guess we're looking at how many are there really? There were always questions about the number that was in the housing study. So starting out with Rhiannon and Quinn with, validating that number, but otherwise, obviously validating against a real list of where these properties are, because we need to identify them, not just count them. And then, of course, land bank folks are going to be looking, we've got the homeless folks working on one side, talking about people making inappropriate uses or maybe permitted uses of those vacant structures and properties. Land banks looking at repurposing and moving them forward.
Mhm.
Same database, same challenges. I'm excited that they've already met and that you can work together. And so appreciate that. We'll look for probably just something pretty preliminary. Maybe at least you'll have a number by January 3rd when we meet again.
Sure.
And, if there's anything that between you and your team, and then adding in Spencer linking with the land bank team, if you divvied up some things, calendared some things, that'll be great.
I think it's important that we overcome the silo that you keep mentioning.
Exactly. And I think it's happening.
Yeah.
So it's really great. And thank you for your work on that. And is there anything else that anyone wanted to visit about today? Brett?
Hand?
Is that a hand or is that your cursor?
I think it's a hand, but maybe it's a cursor. We'll see. Oh, so like if I do this and see if it moves. No one touched it.
It's
That's
cursor.
it. Oh, well, never mind. Anything else, Christina?
Thank you. I just want to briefly touch on what we talked about yesterday, or what I initially talked about yesterday at City Council, which is as long as I can stay on this committee, in the coming years, I am very, very deeply committed to having an actual health component, city health component added on to committee duties. And what I mean by that is, as we look at issues of mental health, addiction, any number of challenges that we know the Shawnee County Health Department keeps track of, I believe very strongly that it's beneficial for us. This is not about recreating the wheel. What this is about developing the important partnerships as we, again, attempt to break out of the silos, to have information shared, not maybe once a year at a city council meeting where it blows over everybody's head, but to have, if possible, an ongoing relationship established with the Shawnee County Health Department to present to this committee to look at some of the health issues, crises, disparities that we are looking at. This is not an attempt by me to try to shovel a whole bunch of money into where money has already been put into place. What it is about is that as we look at all of these intersecting and entwined pieces of affordable housing, of the unsheltered crisis, of homelessness, of addiction, of the wandering mentally ill, of trying to deal with the slum landlords that we have, about trying to help our neighborhoods and lift up Topeka as a whole, not only, well, to me, first and foremost for the residents that live here, and then obviously to bring new people to Topeka. We, in my opinion, cannot do that unless we as a governing body, unless we at a committee level, unless we as Topeka city government can get a better understanding of what people are seeing on the ground that deal with the myriad of issues that we are now faced with that seem to be growing. We already understand with the introduction of the legislative agenda yesterday at the council meeting, the number of pressing issues that we now have to challenge ourselves, not only with working through our lobbyists, because we can't just put this all on a lobbyist. We have to ask ourselves as city council people, as developers of coalitions, how do we move through and forward to say, look, state of Kansas, this is what we're dealing with as a municipality, this is what we're dealing with as a county, and we need more dollars. And here are the numbers that we can say to back that up, because we are front and center as a governing body with these committees looking at these on a monthly basis. Plus, we will have the information at hand. So I just want to say to please expect that, because that is definitely going to be coming down the pike. And I think that we have the ability to handle it.
And this is just a question. At this point, with the super intense activity that's happening on the homeless innovative initiative, whatever it's called, I need to get it down. Are they gathering that at least for some core information, do you think?
If they are, I have not seen it. And I'm auxiliary, I'm not core. I know we have 2 3-hour meetings coming up in December, which before mid-December. So I'm sure we are going to be given a plethora of data. And while they may be, and I have no indication to know that they are, and that would be well and good. What I'm talking about, and I'm not pushing back against what you're saying, I'm adding on top of what I'm saying, is setting the intention for this committee to add another layer that will go on beyond us moving on the homeless crisis.
Because
we
that's a
know,
short-term initiative, and so just was checking, because a lot of, if assuming that they are working on it, a lot of people are working on gathering that right now in terms of the baseline. So we could start, if I'm following you, by sharing what they've come up with rather than trying to repeat it.
And I will tell you that there was a little bit of we lost Brian Cole from the jail. He's now come on as an auxiliary member, not a core member. So we had no representation, my understanding, from someone from the Shawnee County Health Department working on core or auxiliary. So
you're on it, right, John?
Yeah, and I think, so are they sharing that kind of information right here? Right here.
He was considered, well, he was only represented from the county. And it hurt when he dropped out, and I was looking forward to replace him, and he has yet to be replaced, anybody from the county.
The health department would be good.
It would.
I don't know if they've considered that.
I think that they
Okay, well, so the thought would be that looking forward to 2024, to anticipate a periodic once or twice a year, maybe wait until first quarter, even April or something like that, on the assumption that some of that data is going to come out of the homeless group and can be shared.
I think it would be dangerous to assume, but I can check and see about any movements towards having Shawnee County Health Department added. And I would feel better. Well, first we have to establish to see if this partnership will be possible.
right? If they'll be able to come on board and do this kind of presentation here. And then I would prefer it on a quarterly basis.
You know, they have been involved for years in Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods, which
Mhm.
is just about in the process of renaming itself Live Well or something like that, I think. But they've been very heavily involved, and that's been a representative, a community-based representative group. At one point, some of our community engagement staff, I think, went to that. I did too, but there wasn't enough of me to go around, and so I'm not sure if anybody from the city is involved in Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods, but we could find out. They're much more the physical health side and health, nutrition, things like that, than the mental health that I'm aware of.
Mhm.
But I know that the health department is core in that,
Yes,
so,
that's
Okay.
it. That's all I got.
great. With that, does January 3rd look okay for people who are here? All right, we will get that set for our next meeting. And some of us have meetings in between to move these items along. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been good to get caught up and get moving. We're adjourned.